Yeah, yeah.
I like the library. Well, your house. Oh, yeah, the house is good. The library's good.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Hello. Welcome to the Lancaster Library. So glad we can all stay cool on this really hot day. I'm Alice Cooper. I'm the director of the library, and we're just so excited to have our annual Author Expo today. Before I introduce our speaker, I would like to mention that we are having a very fun program on Thursday at 5 o'clock, and it is a special evening with Sherlock Holmes. This program is for all ages. We're going to have games, including bingo, there will be prizes, and of course we'll have some tasty, appropriate refreshments. So I hope you all can come. We even have someone posing as Sherlock Holmes, so it'll be a fun interactive event. I'm sure you noticed downstairs, if you don't know already, our summer book sale is underway. It's our second day, so please partake. And at the end of the program today, I know a lot of you are authors downstairs, but I invite everyone to come downstairs and speak with the 28, I think, authors we have today and come talk to them about writing in their books. So, we are so excited to have Jessica Walker here today. Excuse me, Jessica Walker. My apologies. She has family connections here, and we're so fortunate that she was able to come. She provided a children's program yesterday, and she's going to have a teen program on Monday, and we are going to hear about her writing career today. She is faculty at Parsons School of Design at the New School. She's written 2 board books, which I dearly love, and she's, I think, nearly done with a YA graphic novel kind of book. So, welcome, Jessica. Thank you. Just kidding.
Hi everyone, I'm Jessica, and I am so excited to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to share with you that I love to tell stories, and that's how I share ideas, and I'm sure all of you as writers do that as well. So also just one note that if you don't like your headshots that you've been getting lately, ask a 4-year-old to take your picture, and they will automatically find your good side. I love this picture. I have a lot of people to thank, and some of them aren't listed on here, but a lot of the work I'm going to show is very collaboration-based. And you know, I've been working with the library staff here for a few weeks to put everything together, and they've been so amazing and helpful, and just a lovely group of people. And a special shout out to Susan Whitlow, who's also my mother-in-law. She's the one who volunteers here and recommended that I speak today, so thanks to her. So, you probably can't see all of this, but this is a mood board. And a mood board is something we have in the design world to introduce a concept. So sometimes it looks like a real visual cacophony, and that's what this one is. But it's here just to tell you a little bit about who I am and introduce myself. I'm an associate professor at Parsons School of Design, and I recently stepped into the role of director of the undergraduate program in illustration. And I live in Brooklyn with my husband, who's from Whitestone, and he is in the filmmaking world, and we have 2 sons. So we're busy, but we have fun too. I have illustrated 2 board books, but I'm in the process of writing a young adult novel, which is heavily illustrated, and I'll be talking about those projects today. All right. Before I get started with the projects, I wanted to let you know what I do a little bit, what I teach at Parsons. I am fascinated by the science of storytelling, really what happens to our human brain when we receive information as a story. So I'm not a scientist at all, but from what I've learned studying this, we all experience something called neural coupling. When we hear a story, we interpret it through our own experiences. So someone else kind of gives us the script, and we have our own little mental theater that tells us how to interpret that information. And this is why, if you hear a good story, it really sticks with you. But if you just kind of hear random facts, you don't remember them, or at least I don't. So our brains are definitely wired to retain stories, and this is one of the things that separates us from all other species on the planet. I think Amanda Gorman, who is our country's first youth poet laureate, says it best. For millenniums, humans have told stories to connect, relate, and weave imaginative truths that enable us to see one another more clearly with compassion and courage. Finding empathy is a difficult challenge, but also the most human of the reasons we tell stories. So I'm going to channel Amanda Gorman for a moment and tell you a story about my own relationship to writing. And before I dive into that story, I just want to tell you that at Parsons, where I teach, I work mostly with seniors who are getting ready to graduate, go out in the world and do things. And they are always very nervous about their thesis projects that they're working on. And they talk a really big game in the fall about all these big ideas they're going to do, but come spring, I can't find them. They run away. So I want to tell you a story about my own senior thesis project, and I think it will help to illustrate a little bit about how I approach writing. All right, this is Fairweather Hall. It's the home of the studio art program at the University of Virginia. And a fun fact is that it's the first gymnasium of the university. We actually got to have sculpture class in the old emptied out indoor pool, which was very fun. I majored in art history and minored in studio art, and being at UVA was like nothing I had ever experienced before. I was so thankful for the opportunity to study with world-class faculty and attend classes that truly blew my mind. But I never really felt like I belonged here. Academic prestige wasn't really my thing. I went to classes slightly terrified because I found myself in class with really smart people. And I'm not saying I'm dumb, but I wasn't like valedictorian of my class, you know? And so I think the way that this came through was really through my writing. I kind of wasn't confident about my writing at all. I didn't want to share it with anyone. I was just very nervous about it. A professor at UVA once wrote at the top of my midterm paper, quote, "You don't know what you're doing, do you?" End quote. Ouch. So I want to tell you a story about what happened here at Fairweather Hall, and specifically at that bush right there. During my senior year, I was standing right here having a conversation with another art major who had only just met and went on to marry, and we're still married. But we were having this really wonderful conversation, and we were both seniors, and we were going to graduate, and as I'm talking to him, I see my thesis advisor start to walk up the stairs. And my thesis advisor was someone who I was terrified of. I was kind of just like really intimidated by him. And he was like a real scholar in the field. Like every time I went to the library, he had written all the books. So back to the hedge. Okay, so it was right before spring break, and I had not touched my senior thesis, had not started it. That's like a month before graduation. So time is ticking, and I see my advisor walking toward me. And so in that moment, I decide I'm going to softly grab this person who I've just met, and we're going to hide in this bush. And that is what I did. In that moment, my reptilian brain was like, I got to get out of here. So I remember the action being like this, like smooth, stealth, becoming one with the bush. My now husband remembers it more like this. a frantic, desperate, run for the hills type of leap into the bush. But whatever you prefer, just know that I am so thankful to this bush. It saved my life, actually, but it is over 20 years later from this moment, but this is such a symbol for me, how I approach things, and maybe kind of explains why I'm a little bit of the person I am. Do I jump in the bush? Do I face my fears? What's the worst thing that could happen if I just tell them that I haven't done anything? It turns out that many years later, I found this professor, and we were at an event together, and I told him the whole story, and we laughed about it. And I think it's a wonderful thing that we can have storytelling to connect with the people who we're even intimidated by. So fast forward to today, and I'm the thesis advisor. I'm trying to track down my students before they jump into the bush. It's probably more like a subway station where we are. But I'm able to connect with them because of this story, and I understand where they're coming from. So I'm very thankful. So spoiler alert, I am not trained as an illustrator. I am a visual artist. I make drawings, I make mostly 2D art, and these are combinations of hand-drawn techniques and digital tools. And after a significant amount of time trying to play in the art world sandbox, I realized I do really like the sand, the art, but I don't really like the box, the gallery. So perhaps instead of galleries, I should look to books as a container for my ideas. So one day, an acquaintance, my friend Libby, was talking to me while we were both watching our kids at the neighborhood playground in Brooklyn. And she was excited to learn that I taught at Parsons. And she asked if I could connect her with illustrators because she had a new concept for a children's book and she wanted an illustrator to mock it up for her. And she was just so confident. She'd never written a book before, but she has an MBA. So she told me about this concept she had, which was a lift the flapboard book where you would see iconic feminists as adults, but under each flap would be that same person as a baby. This simple concept illustrates that no matter how ceiling-shattering someone is or was, they started out as a baby, just like all of us. I thought this book concept was genius. So much so that I just really wanted to be a part of it. And so I lied, and I told her I was an illustrator. Or maybe I said graphic designer. I wasn't really either of those things, but I just really wanted to work on this project. So Libby shared more details with me about the book on the morning of February 15th, and by the morning of February 16th, I had shared a really quick sketch of a rendering of Rosa Parks. And it's not the most detailed or moving image, but it conveyed a playful kind of style that could work for her concept. So looking back at this sketch, I'm reminded that sometimes you just have to get something out in the world. It doesn't have to be perfect, it can just be quick. And the response from Libby, "Whoa, Jess, that's amazing." This response was way more encouraging than the feedback from my art history papers. It was collaborative and exciting, and it just felt great. For the next month, we had a hard time focusing on our day jobs because all we wanted to do was work on this book. Libby and I wanted to learn more than we already knew about feminism, and we wanted to make really informed choices about who to include in the book because we knew we would have to narrow it down to a pretty tight list. We watched a ton of films. We were fortunate enough to score tickets to an off-Broadway play about Gloria Steinem's life, which was wonderful. We read books by Angela Davis and attended a lecture with Bell Hooks. And it quickly became clear that for this type of project, the research was just as important as making the images and writing the words. Maybe you find that as well for your books. So through this daily practice of learning together and writing together and drawing together, we made a working draft and illustrations for the book. I like to think about baby feminists as a fairy tale, and fairy tales have fairy godmothers, and we had a fairy godmother. Libby had a family connection to a bigwig in the publishing industry, who I'll refer to as Bigwig Fairy Godmother. She scouts for books for adaptation to film, and her clients include Steven Spielberg and Netflix. So I was like, you're gonna look at our project? Okay, that's great. She did, and in her capacity as our fairy godmother, she informed us that the first step we had to take was to find an agent. We didn't know that. It turns out because we were new to the game and didn't have an agent, we wouldn't be taken seriously. So we turned our focus to getting an agent. And you can't see all these words, so I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit, but our bigwig fairy godmother took us under her wing, and with a poof of pixie dust, she shared some really sage advice, and things like, look at books that are similar to yours from the last 5 to 10 years that have done really well, and find out who agented them. That's a verb, right? Agents want to see an entire book if it's like a board book, so it's good to copyright that material before you send it out. It's not that they're thieves, but good to be safe. You can become a member of Publishers Marketplace, which is a resource that publishes a list of top agents. You can Google those agents and learn what kind of projects they take on and what makes them tick. You'll spend some time researching those folks, and then you'll narrow it down to say 20. And then you'll contact about 5 at a time. Don't ever send anything to a generic email address at the agency, this is her quote, or the submission form or anything like that. They will try to get you to do that, but then the book will land in a giant pile on the desk of a 20-year-old stone intern whose job it is to weed out 99% of the submissions. Sad but true. So with this sprinkling of pixie dust that were these wonderful pieces of advice, we set out to find an agent, and we focused on that. And this is our actual pitch letter that we used to solicit an agent. And I've just kind of annotated it here with some of my thoughts. The shameless name drop. Bigwig Fairy Godmother is in the first line of this letter. We were instructed not to put it in the email subject because that's just too desperate. But first line, okay. What is it that you're working on? Be able to give a clear and concise description in the shortest of sentences. This was a digital pitch, so we had a fun animated version of Lifting the Flap, which agents later told us was very impactful. If you can't complete the full book by the time you submit it to an agent, it's a good idea to have at least some part of it fully rendered so they know the idea that you're going for. You have to mention comps or comparable titles. What are other books that share similarities with your project? And bonus points if those comps were wildly successful. And right after the comps, make sure to tell how your book is unique from those comps. Why is your project needed now in the world? What's happening in the world that makes your book so important today? And be sure to tell your story. Why are you a writer or a content creator of some kind? What experiences have influenced your writing? And what are all the feathers in your cap? Recognition and awards. And at the end, we threw in some humor because we are funny and playful people, and we wanted to show that. And so we made up fake blurbs from famous people who were featured in the book, like Barack Obama. He didn't write that, but we made that clear. So, very exciting, we got an agent through this process. With this pitch letter and our pixie dust from our fairy godmother, we started getting a few calls back from agents who were interested in working with us. Yay! We got very excited, and this one particular agent, we got very excited because he called us back. I'll call him Super Agent. He was selling books by authors and illustrators that Libby and I really admired, and they were books that our kids loved. And he was happy to represent us, but there was a catch. He would be putting us solely in the hands of our, who I'll refer to as IA, or inexperienced assistant, who was just learning the ropes. So we were obviously a little apprehensive about an experienced assistant, but who were we? No one. So we said, okay. And just a quick note about interns and assistants. They are some of the most wonderful, hardworking people because they have to prove themselves. And they don't have a huge client list, so they can devote their time to you. And that's what we experienced with an experienced assistant, and she was wonderful. This is the part of the process where you get so many rejections. And rejections to the point where you really start to doubt yourself. Your agent has probably sent this out to more people than you want to think about. And these are some actual rejections from actual publishers that we received. Sometimes they'll say things like, this already exists in the world, we don't need it. Okay? Or they'll say, this is way too expensive, nobody makes the flat books anymore because production costs for books is crazy, too expensive. So you get a million of these rejections, but the wonderful thing about making books is that you can have a million rejections, you just need one acceptance, which is wonderful. And that is what happened for us. We did have interest from 3 publishers who made an upfront offer, which we later learned was a lowball offer, a tactic some publishers push out early to underplay their hand with new authors and illustrators. And full disclosure, as an artist in New York City, I was like, let's take that money and run. But our agent was like, no, wait, be patient. And so we followed her inexperienced advice. And lo and behold, we received a letter from an editor who I'll refer to as patron saint at Viking Children's Books. She is a classy person. She doesn't write emails, she writes letters. And it was just magical to receive this letter. And one by one, all of those rejections I just had kind of faded away. And these words were so kind and wonderful, we couldn't believe it. We were thrilled to accept that offer, and we signed contracts in June 2017, and we were 2 working moms, so we made these books in the middle of the night after our kids went to bed. We completed the book in March 2018, and then after months of meetings with editors, book designers, safety specialists, did you know that baby board books have to go through choking hazard testing? Authenticity readers, marketing, publicity. Baby Feminist was published in October of 2018. And when I got my first copy in the mail, my head left my body. I couldn't believe it. It looked so much better than I ever thought it would. And I just couldn't believe I was holding something in my hands that took so much time and effort and negotiation. And I know it looks so simple, but it's a lot of work. And then the real fun began. We had some launch events, and we were asked to speak at feminist-themed baby events. Just feminist and baby, separate events. I guess babies are feminists too. We started receiving a bit of press and recognition from Smithsonian and Parents Magazine. The Chicago Tribune ran a story called Raising a Son to Be a Man Post-Kavanaugh, where our book is recommended. And the really cool thing about making a children's book when you're a mom is that your kids think you're cool. It's something they can understand. It was awesome to roll up to a book event with my kid in the stroller, and he was the target audience. So fun. 2 small things to wrap up this fairy tale. I can't describe how fun it is to be able to dedicate a book to someone. I wasn't prepared for that, and it was so lovely. I dedicated Baby Feminist to my mom, and major brownie points with your mom if you dedicate your book. But perhaps the most rewarding and unexpected joy was a letter that came from Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, addressed to Libby and her mom, who had given RBG a copy of our book at an event that they had attended. So I thought that the editor's letter was good, but this one's way better. She writes, "Smile eliciting surprise awaited me on return to DC after successfully completing 3 weeks of daily radiation. Baby Feminist is a delight, which will soon be on its way to 19-month-old great-granddaughter in Paris. So when I'm having a bad day, I just look at that. And that's the story of Baby Feminist. And except we did it all over again with Baby Feminist 2, and we made plenty of mistakes and learned a lot with that book as well. But that's the story. So, did you ever watch that British sketch comedy show called Now for Something Completely Different? That's what this is. There's no good segue. This project that I'm currently working on has nothing to do with Baby Feminist. So Act 2. When I was a kid, there was this mystical place called Green Bank, West Virginia. And I was driving through with my parents as a young kid. Maybe we were on our way to a family reunion. I have a lot of family in West Virginia. But I found this place, and from the moment that you see these giant radio telescopes just bursting out of the valley floor, you're just like, what is this place? The sheer scale and anomaly amidst dairy barns, the Dollar General store, and hay fields is just odd. So many years later, when I was in college, I was taking a class in astronomy, and we studied the Green Bank Observatory and how it was an epicenter for the search for extraterrestrial life in the universe. And I was intrigued because it's like Appalachia, aliens, cool. Green Bank, West Virginia, is at the center of the federally mandated National Radio Quiet Zone. This is a section of Appalachia where use of cell phones, wireless internet, and microwaves are highly regulated because the radio waves these devices emit could interfere with the cosmic sensing that happens at the observatory. Even now, in the age of constant connection, teenagers in Green Bank have to be very creative with their communication methods because texting and social media aren't always an option, and they still have payphones. I knew Green Bank would be a unique setting for a story, and the idea kind of flowed from there. I think I'm most inspired by setting in place, and then the story comes later. So my project is called Secret Astronomers. It's a novel set in 2016-2017, and it is handwritten over a textbook of general astronomy. This is astronomer Charles Augustus Young. He was the Mr. Wizard of the late 1800s, and he produced these popular astronomy textbooks, but they are now in the public domain. So I'm using this for my project. The handwriting of the novel contends for space on the page with the original textbook content. And the two characters in this book begin a written correspondence inside the pages of this textbook, which they keep in their high school library in Green Bank. In order to remain anonymous to one another and to the outside world, the girls take on pen names that they find in the book, Copernicus and Kepler. After writing about a day's happenings, the girls reshelved the book in the library, a diary hidden in plain sight. The story unfolds in a fully, I can't do this word, somebody's going to have to help me. Epistolary? How do you say it? Epistolary. I need to write that down. Epistolary format through the handwritten notes, drawings, and ephemera that both girls create on the pages. The pair form the Secret Astronomers, a secret society of which they are the only members. When strange supernatural activities start occurring around them in Green Bank, they get thrown into a mystery that involves Copernicus's mother, who grew up in Green Bank. One girl is from Appalachia, and the other one just arrived there from the West Coast. So the girl from Appalachia is always having to explain some very strange happenings. I'm from Appalachia. So the book is about many things, but if I had to just throw out some highlights, it's teenage drama, it's questions about gender politics in rural America, it's hiding liquor and shampoo bottles in the girls' locker room, it's about mandatory minimum jail sentences for opioid-addicted youth, it's how to cure poison ivy with plants from your garden, It's trying to talk to your neighbor, as well as aliens, and a crush on a guy gone very wrong. I'll never tell which stories are real life and which are pure fantasy. One of the real perks about being a professor is that you have access to graduate students who are excited to assist you with book research. So I got this project going, and I worked closely with my research assistant, Anamika, who understandably was very overwhelmed by the way that I keep track of my ideas, which is on random piece of paper that float around the room. And she was desperate to help me figure out a better system for that. And she introduced me to Mural. Has anybody used Mural? Yeah, it's great. It's an online collaborative platform that allowed us to facilitate our bi-weekly meetings. And together, we were able to create frameworks about how we wanted to do research about Green Bank, how would we conduct interviews and do ethnographic research. What would the process of building these characters look like? Who were they going to be? What were my visual inspirational sources? So this just became a really fun way to keep track of this research. It was transformative, actually. I'll never go back to paper. So this was great. But of course, I needed to dig deep into the literary inspiration and resources, which are so fun. And I was always happy to read about Appalachian culture. These are just a few of the many things Anamika and I read together. Barbara Kingsolver's Pulitzer Prize-winning Demon Copperhead is the story of a boy named Demon growing up in southwestern Virginia, where I'm from. He's born to a teenage single mother in a single-wide trailer, and he braves the perils of foster care, forced child labor disguised as farm chores, derelict schools, athletic success, and opioid addiction. I see that it's on the reading list, your reading group, book club. J.D. Vance's, now Senator Vance, Hillbilly Elegy is a passionate and colorful memoir written from the perspective of a young man who grew out of poverty in rural Appalachia to later attend Yale Law School. Vance certainly faced considerable backlash from historians and journalists over his depiction of Appalachia. In the podcast series, Dolly Parton's America, Jad Abumrad explores the Dollyverse to uncover why Dolly Parton is a symbol of American culture that bridges our country's political divide. We dive deep into Dolly's personal story about growing up in a log cabin in the rural mountains of East Tennessee and her incredible journey to beat all odds and become amazing and famous. It's a joy. I highly recommend it. The Quiet Zone is by the journalist Stephen Kirksey, and he explores the pervasive role of technology in our modern day times, our need to connect with others through technology. He's a very successful journalist, but he works for the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, but he himself refuses to carry a cell phone, to which people gawk at him because who could do that? But he writes about this, and he visited Green Bank because he was so interested to go to a community that lives without communication technology. It's a wonderful book. So I decided that I had done enough armchair research and I was going to go to Green Bank myself and surround myself with this mysterious town that I remembered from my childhood, but now really wanted to absorb it, to see the spirit of this place. This image I took is at the Little League field. The Little League team is sponsored by the National Radio Astronomy Observatory and Southern State. When I'm there in Green Bank, it dawns on me how important quiet is for connection with a place. Usually you go to a place and you just pull out your phone and you check when you can check in your hotel, or you look at what restaurant you're going to go to, and then you fire up your GPS, but not here. Your smartphone is essentially a dumb phone. And there's one solitary radio station, and it's AM because FM is banned due to the telescopes. The first stop on my tour is a meeting with Dr. Hannah Sizemore. a planetary scientist at the Green Bank Observatory, and she grew up in Pocahontas County, where Green Bank is. She had a lot to say about what it means to be generations deep in Appalachia, while also identifying as a liberal progressive with a PhD in planetary science. In our meeting, Dr. Sizemore reminded me of something that I'd forgotten. You pretty much have to talk to your neighbors, even if you don't agree with their politics, because it's highly likely that you depend on them for something. The farmers, who may not vote the same way you do, are the ones who grow your food that's on your table. I came to the observatory to learn about how to connect with aliens, but instead I learned about connecting with terrestrials across the aisle. After my meeting with Dr. Sizemore, I had the opportunity to get up close to these telescopes, but there are some rules. If you want to take pictures at the observatory, you have to have an analog camera. So you can't use a digital camera because there's digital noise that happens when you take a picture. So I came prepared with my 35 millimeter, which I'm not good at. But have you tried to take a selfie with a 35 millimeter lately? It's hard. It kind of came out. Also, only vehicles that run on diesel fuel are permitted to be here because the radio waves ignited by the spark plugs in a gas-powered vehicle would interrupt the telescopes. The campus is fairly large, so you either have to walk it or take a bus tour. I chose to walk because I wanted to experience the telescopes on my own pace, in solitude with these man-made giants. There are no images that illustrate the scale. It's impossible. The Green Bank telescope, the largest one, is a parabolic dish the size of a football stadium. Standing near it is humbling. It can be pointed in any direction in the universe, and it has the largest collecting area of any fully steerable telescope in the world. In fact, it's the largest moving structure on land. Scientists buy for precious time to use the telescope for their research. Many are searching for patterns of radio waves that might indicate possible signs of extraterrestrial intelligence that are light years away. To our human knowledge, radio signals are the most efficient way to send a "we are here" type message across interstellar space. Astrophysicists, astronomers, planetary scientists, astrobiologists use the telescope to study the radio among our most magnificent phenomena in our universe: stellar nurseries, pulsars, binary stars, and black holes. Back down to Earth, after having my mind blown at the observatory, I meet with shopkeepers, business owners along the main drag of Marlinton, which is the county seat in Pocahontas County. I visited the Historical Society, where they have a museum that houses an eclectic mix of relics from the Civil War, but also folklore about supposed alien contact at the observatory. And I really like that mix. I had the opportunity to go on a hike with Erica Marks, who's the director of the U Mountain Center, and she taught me about what plants will cure you and which will kill you. A little further south, I visit a farm stay where Elise Lauterbach lives and works, and she teaches me about foraging for art materials in the wilderness. I learned how to make ink out of foiled black walnut shells, which, if you're interested, you can find a ton of recipes online, I'm happy to say. Boiling black walnuts by a campfire and making paintbrushes out of a squirrel tail brought on a new level of connection to the land of my Scots-Irish ancestors and to the indigenous people who were here long before them. There's something that just feels right about illustrating a book about this place using ink from native flora and a brush from native fauna. So the research is so fun, and then you have to write, and that is not fun for me. I need help, people. I want to make it fun. So it turns out that, when you're out doing research, you're talking to people, you're learning stuff, you're like a sponge. But then it comes to writing, and I somehow have to get all those little sparks of ideas into something cohesive, and that seems very difficult. I write in my basement in Brooklyn, and it's not a very inspiring place, but there are very few distractions, no windows, it's quiet, and I begin working on this book all the time. I work on the book so much that sometimes I think I'm talking to Copernicus and Kepler. Does this ever happen to you? Is that okay? Writing alone in a basement is not great, but I force myself to do it every day because I'm on this magical thing called sabbatical, which allows me to take a break from teaching and focus all of my creative energy on writing. But sabbatical also feels like a lot of pressure. When I return from my sabbatical, I know my type A colleagues are going to ask what I did. I went to West Virginia and made paintbrushes out of squirrel tails. That doesn't always fly with MacArthur geniuses and Guggenheim fellows. It dawns on me that I've been putting all of my effort into a single project that might not ever see the light of day. Was that smart for a sabbatical? No. But that's what all writing is, so much upfront work with no promise of publishing. But then, as the spring starts to make life in New York City bearable again, my agent, same one from Baby Feminist, decides that I have enough of an idea that I can pitch this project to publishers. So, remember the hedge? This is the part of the story where I'd like to go back in there, just for a little while, so I don't have to think about these editors sipping their coffee in their Manhattan skyscraper, reading my draft. I imagine getting a note back that says, "You don't know what you're doing, do you?" Just like college, but I try not to listen to that voice. And my agent gets the pitch out to so many editors, and time passes so slowly. I check my email 1 million times a day. I overheard my son telling another mom at the playground that, quote, "My mom isn't working right now," end quote, to which I said, "Eating snacks all day in the basement and writing a novel is working." But then, like receiving a radio signal from across the universe, we start hearing back from publishers who might be interested. They ask to meet me to understand who would have written the strangest young adult novel of all time. They have questions to discuss, and that sounds promising, so I wipe the snack crumbs off my face and slowly emerge from my basement. And I'm happy to say that after a lot of conversations and a lot of back and forth, I have a publisher, again, Viking Young Readers, home of Baby Feminist. So this book, Secret Astronomers, will be released in the fall of 2025. So, yeah. So I thought I would just close it out here with a few images of what the book is looking like. All of the illustrations occur over the original text of this textbook that's in the public domain. And it's just been a lot of fun. You can see, how did you survive this place? This is the girl from the West Coast really struggling to have landed in Green Bay. Some of these are certainly inspired from my own journal when I was a high school student. I think I will leave it at that. Is that good?
Thank you so much.
Yes.
That's so fascinating. I think maybe one or two questions, and then I know everyone's anxious to get downstairs. So, and Jessica's got a table downstairs in front of the fireplace, and the conversation can continue there as well. Okay, so, yes.
Yeah.
I walked in here. Did you grow up in Southwest Virginia?
I'm from Abingdon, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Are you from that part of
I
the world?
have lots of family all that way.
Oh, cool.
Rural Retreat.
Oh, yeah.
Ridgeville.
Yeah. I'm even further south
Yeah,
than that.
I know,
Yeah.
right on the border.
Yeah.
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 Practically.
Yeah.
Well, and where did you go to college?
University of Virginia.
Oh, you did? Okay,
Yeah.
I thought I recognized the,
Yeah.
the building. Okay,
That was
yeah,
it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank nominated. Say